All right, you found Pre-Algebra lesson 3.1, and this is one of my favorite lessons. Solving equations is really a fun thing to do, and you know what? It's an easy thing. It really, really is. If you learn a couple principles, then equations can be quite easy. And so let's go ahead and learn how to solve equations first off by adding. All right, well, let's get some preliminaries out of the way. First off, an equation is two mathematical expressions that are equal. Right, you think about an equation, you got an equal sign, you got stuff on the left, you got stuff on the right, right? Those are the mathematical expressions. So when we talk about an equation, we're talking about two mathematical expressions that are equal. All right, so A, the solution of an equation is the value of the variable that makes the equation equal, or you could say, if you want, true. It's the value of the variable that will make the equation equal, or you can think of it as making it true. So let's take a look. All right, here's a very, very simplistic equation. Now look, honestly, we teach you complex, uh, we teach you how to do things on simplistic situations. So if you look at this equation, I would think that you could look at that and almost everybody would say the solution is, and hopefully you'll say 18, right? Solution is 18. Now, I just want to show you why 18 is the solution. All right, so if you remember, we've been doing substitution. So where the variable is, we're going to put in the 18. So that goes in where the x is. I still have the minus 3, the equal sign, and the 15. Now I'm going to simplify the left-hand side of the equation. 18 minus 3 is 15. And look where we end up. 15 equals 15. You see how the solution made the equation equal, how it made the equation true. Now, if you put any other number in there, that won't happen. So what is the solution? It's the value of the variable that makes the equation equal, or in other words, true. Okay, well, let's talk about the goal in solving equations. And this is something that you should have in your brain. You'll hear me mention this many times. So the standard answer is this. What is the goal in solving equations? It is to isolate the variable. To isolate the variable. All right, you know what isolate means. If somebody's off in the wild all by themselves in the wilderness, then they're isolated. In prison, if somebody gets in big trouble, they put them in isolation. What is that? A cell all by themselves. Well, to isolate the variable, you need to explain what that is, and here's what it means in an equation. Get the variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign. That's the goal in solving equations. That's what it means to solve an equation, to get the variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign. And what you are doing, in effect, is figuring out the value of the variable, right? When you isolate the variable, when you get it all by itself on one side of the equal sign, then you are, in effect, solving the equation. Now, be careful here. Note, the variable must be positive. Occasionally, students will solve an equation and they'll end up with something like this. You don't need to write it, but here's an example. They'll get to a point where they'll have negative n equals 4, and they circle their answer. Well, they're not done. And they might say, but I isolated the variable. Well, when we say isolate the variable, we want you to get it all by itself on one side of the equal sign, but we also need it to be positive. And in this case, it is not positive. Now, I'll show you how to deal with that. That's really a lesson down the road. The point I'm trying to make right now is you're not done if that's your situation. You got to deal with that. And we'll look at those situations. All right. So while I'm talking about how to solve an equation, what it is, I wanted to bring that up. Okay, let me give you some tips. Now, there are many ways to skin the cat, as you know, and but there are some things that you can do to make life easier on yourself. Now, many of you, you're detail oriented. That's a good thing. You pay attention to detail and you try to replicate the details of the things I'm trying to teach you. So when you do homework, I see that detail. When you take a quiz or do a test, I see that detail. And it is those details that are important things that make it overall easier to get the correct answer. Now, unfortunately, some of you are not detail oriented and you don't pay attention to the details. Hence, you make a lot of mistakes. You make things more difficult on yourself. So, here are some things that are some details that will make life easier on you and it'll make it easier to solve equations. All right, the first one is only use one equal sign per line. Only use one equal sign per line. You know what this does for you? Look over here on the right. Here's what this does for you. This one equal sign allows you to establish a left side. You can go ahead and write this in on your notes, and a right side. And that's great because that's the idea of an equation. You have a left side and you have a right side. Now, if you only do one equal sign per line, you will maintain a left side and a right side. Right along with that, number two, do the work down, not across. Do the work down, not across. Look, here's the key in solving equations. The step before and what you do to that step will give you the next step. For example, look again to the right-hand side. The proper way to solve this equation is to add a positive 11 to both sides of the equal sign. So notice I add a positive 11 to the left side of the equal sign, and I added a positive 11 to the right side of the equal sign. And now we're going to total them up. So the next line is going to be the total. Well, I have the n. And what just happened here? Negative 11 and positive 11 is 0, right? So that was 0. So I have n plus 0 on the left. I have my equal sign, right? And then on the right, you've got to add these up, 37 negatives and 11 positives. And I hope you think that the answer to that is 26 negatives. So right now we have n plus 0 equals 26. Notice I have one equal sign. I have a left side, I have a right side. And you would finish this, n plus 0 is n. And the solution to this equation should be n equals negative 26. But here's the points I'm trying to make right now. Only use one equal sign per line and do your work down, not across. Do your work down, not across. All right, and then number three, don't forget this. Now, look, this is something you do after you finish the quiz. This is something you do after you're done with all the problems of a test. If you stop every problem and try to do this, you may run out of time on the quiz or test. That's not the proper way to do it. But you can go back after you're done and check your solutions. So, and that's exactly the point here. Number three, solutions can be checked by substituting the value of the variable back into the original equation. So look again to the right. Here's the original equation, but where the n was, I put a parentheses, right, for our substitution. And what did we find out? We're saying n should be a negative 26, so let me put it in the blank. And let's see, what is the left side? 26 negatives and 11 more negatives is 37 negatives. And yeah, sure enough, it worked. Things checked out. I know I have the correct answer. But again, if you take the time to do that, every problem as you do the problem, you may run out of time for that quiz or test. That's not the proper technique. The proper technique is do the work, be careful in it. Once you're done and have time now remaining, go back and start checking your work. All right, but you can check solutions in solving equations. All right, so how do you isolate the variable? It's real simple. You're going to hear me say this a million times. You're going to have short answer questions like this. Move all quantities. Move all quantities on the same side of the equal sign as the variable to the other side. Well, isolate the variable. You know, if we were in the classroom right now, maybe I'd look over at the row all the way on the right, and I might say something like this. If I wanted to isolate Brendan, what would I have to do? And of course, my right, your left. And the answer would be we got to move everybody away from Brendan. If we move everybody away from him, he'll be isolated. That's the idea. So we're going to find the variable and we're going to move everything away from it. Pretty simplistic. Now, how do you do that? So I'm going to asterisk this B here because this is the one that I say 100 million times. All right, so here's your thought process. Quantities added to the variable are moved by, this is real easy, adding. Huh, look at that. Quantities added to the variable are moved by adding. All right, that's easy to remember. Add it to the variable, move it by adding. Now, what do you add? You have to add their opposite, also called the inverse. You have to add their opposite to both sides of the equal sign. Hey, that's how you move it. Now, again, this is a first step in figuring out how to solve equations. Get good technique. Again, all these are going to be pretty easy things, but if you'll have good technique, then you'll end up where you ought to be when the equations get more complex. All right, look at number one. So with this, why we're allowed to do this is the addition property, or yes, the addition property of equality. It's what allows us to be able to move something added to the variable by adding their opposite to both sides. And it just goes like this. It says that you can add the same quantity both sides of an equal sign. So I have, let's suppose you have an equation and it's A equals B. If you want, you can add a C to both sides. As long as you add the same thing. Right? As long as you add the same thing to both sides, you still have something that's equal. And that's what you're trying to maintain in an equation. We have to maintain the fact that it's equal. A lot of times teachers will have balanced scales and show students how you have to keep things balanced. And that's the concept. So if I had a balance scale, right, I'm holding my arms out right now. You can't see that. Here, I'll give you a little picture here. So I've got this balance scale, right? I've got it going. And if I've got a 20 over here, then I need a 20 over there to keep it balanced, right? Well, what happens if I put a 5 on the right side? Well, it's going to start to tip down there, right? But what if I put a 5 on the left side? It's still balanced. It's still balanced, right? What if I take away 15 from the left side? Now the left side's lighter and it starts going down on the right side. But what if I take away 15 from the right side? So you can add the same quantity both sides. In the first illustration, I added 5 to both sides. In the second illustration, I added a negative 15 to both sides. As long as I do the same thing, I can keep it balanced. That's the addition equality property. Okay, so we're just going to go through and make sure that we understand what we're looking to move and how we're going to move it. Okay? And these are, again, these are real easy. Equations are easy. You're going to do very well on these. All right, number two, the quantity added to the variable is always on the same side as the variable. Because again, you're moving everything away from it. So all I want you to do is box in the quantity added to the variable. So look at A, and what I want you to do is take your red and box in the thing that is added to the variable. So remember, you got a left side, you got a right side. What's added to the variable? And hopefully you boxed in the 7, the positive 7. Now remember, I've taught you from day one, keep the sign with the number. So in reality, if we could move the positive 7 to the other side, the x, the variable, will be all by itself. And that's how we solve, and that's what we're going to end up doing. Look at the second example. Look at B. What is added to the variable? Now you might say, Mr. Scarfi, there's nothing added to the variable. Oh, you forget already, do you? Remember, technically, this is what we have, but we don't bother to write it that way. Technically, this is a y plus a negative 3 equals 17. So in this case, it's real easy to see what's added to the variable. It's the negative 3. And we would add its opposite to both sides to move it to the other side to get the y all by itself. Okay? So that's really a negative thing. Again, you've always got to remember. Here, let me use my magic pen. You have always got to remember that. You have to remember that. You just have to. Come on, where's my box? My magic pen is malfunctioning. All right, I don't know. It's probably because I'm below that. There we go, right? So remember, it's the exact same thing. So it's a negative 3 then we would try to move because technically it's added to the variable. All right, look at C. So let me give you a second. Go ahead and box in the thing, the quantity that's added to the variable. Now, when I do this in class, I'll have students boxing in the -9. And that's not correct. Look at the variable. It's on the right-hand side now. To isolate the n is to move anything on the same side as the n away to the other side. The 4 is on the same side of the n, and that's what we need to move. So we would add a +4 to both sides. All right, take a look at D. What do you have to move on D to isolate the variable? Well, D is a little bit more complex problem. It is the 1 that is added to the variable. What is it when a number is written next to a variable with nothing in between? That operation is multiplication. Do you see how the 2 is multiplied times the variable, but the 1 is added to the variable? And we would move the 1 by adding its opposite to both sides. All right, a few more here. Look at E. Find your variable. What is it that's added to the variable? In this case, it's a 2/3. Oh no, Mr. Scarfi, a fraction. We can't do fractions. Yeah, we can. And we will. The point right now is, hey, don't you see that the 2/3 is added to the variable, and that's what we need to move? And then one more here, F. What is added to the variable? The -3 is what's added. The 5 is multiplied. We'll deal with that condition tomorrow or the next day. All right, so we're gonna move the -3. Okay, just a little bit there. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's actually do some problems. Okay, so solve the following. Learn the process on these easy ones. Now, look, I said they're easy. You can look at A and figure out the answer, can't you? Come on, say it out loud in your bedroom or living room or wherever you are right now. The answer is n equals, all right, and hopefully you thought 9. But listen, we're trying to learn the process, right? So first off, I want you to realize that we have to move the +3, right? Isn't that on the same side as the n? And how do we move it? We add a -3 to both sides. Now, there are two methods in showing how to add a -3 to both sides. There's the vertical method. It's the one I like. You add a -3 on the left side of the equal sign and a -3 on the right side of the equal sign. And you can even draw a little addition bar if you want. So now we're ready to continue on. Now, if you did everything right, when you go to add up the two things on the same side as the variable, they'll add up to 0. +3 and -3 is 0. See, that's how things move, by getting them to be 0. And then that equals, what's the right side? 12 minus 3, we all know is 9. All right, and then to finish it up, add the n plus the 0. N plus 0 is n, and n equals 9. Just like we thought, right? By the way, again, you can put 9 back into the original and check to see if your answer is correct. Now, this is how your work should look. Okay, and it's real simple. There's not a whole lot involved with the work, but this is how your work should look. Do you need this stuff on the right? No, these are just the thoughts. So I'm trying to train your brain and what to think to be able to do the problem. So that's just thoughts out there. The work is right there, right? All right, let's do another one. Let's go to the next page. So you look at this problem, your first thought is, what do I need to move? And I hope you're thinking the +5. So how would you move it? What would you add to both sides? I hope you're thinking its opposite, which is a -5. So I'm going to come to the left side of the equal sign. I'm going to put a -5. I'm going to come to the right side of the equal sign. I'm going to put a -5. Look, you have to add the same quantity, the same thing to both sides. If not, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to get the problem wrong. So let's go ahead. -5 or +5 minus 5 is 0, right? That's what we wanted. We have plus y, and then we equal. What do you get on the right-hand side? What would the right-hand side be? All right, you got a number in mind? All right, I hope you're thinking 21 negatives and 5 more negatives is 26 negatives, right? And now we can finish it off. Y plus 0 is y. Y equals negative 26. Again, you can go back and put it in for the variable to check it. But remember, you wouldn't do that until you were done with the quiz or done with the test. This way, you're sure that you have time and you've gotten to all the problems first. All right, let's do another one. 9 equals x plus 13. All right, stay with me now. What are you going to move? What are you going to move? All right, I hope you're thinking the positive 13. Isn't it on the same side as the variable? They're both on the right. We got to move the 13 and then the x will be by itself. All right, how do you move a positive 13? You add its opposite to both sides, right? A negative 13. So come to the left side of the equal sign, put a negative 13. Come to the right side of the equal sign, put a negative 13. Again, our addition bar. All right, left-hand side, what's 9 minus 13? And I hope you're thinking negative 4, right? 9 positives and 13 negatives is 4 negatives. Now, I will tell you this. Normally, on the right-hand side, we'll just do the x. We won't say x plus 0. Now, the previous two examples, I did put x plus 0. But it's such a, it's such an easy extra step that I usually don't require it of you. But listen, 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 listen. You better make sure, though, that these two add up to 0. Otherwise, you made a mistake. And if you'll look there, you'll find your mistakes and you'll correct it and you'll get the problem right. And I'm telling you, I've been doing this for a long time, right? Do students make mistakes there? I'm telling you, they make mistakes. I'll show you what I mean on the next one, okay? So that's it. You're done on that one. Negative 4 equals x. That's our answer. Doesn't matter if the variable's on the right or the left. If you really have to have your variable on the left, you can do what's called a symmetric property. You're allowed to switch everything on the right and put it on the left, everything on the left and put it on the right. Either way, it's the same answer. Negative 4 equals x, or x equals negative 4. All right? Let's do D. Let's do D. All right, so in D, again, you're looking at this, and what do I need to move? Are you thinking of something? Look at the problem. What do you need to move? I hope you're thinking the negative 7. And how do you move it? By adding its opposite, a positive 7 to both sides. Now I want to pause for a moment. Don't do anything, just look at the problem. I'm going to show you a mistake. Some students say you got to move the 7. So let's add a negative 7 to both sides. Don't do this. This is incorrect. But I want to make my point. So we still have the n, right? Whoops, that was supposed to be blue, not that big black one. So n. But look, shouldn't you catch yourself right now? Is that 0? Oh, that's not 0. 7 negatives and 7 more negatives, 14 negatives. Oh, I made a mistake. So, hey, you'll catch yourself if you're looking. So again, what are we moving? We're moving the negative 7. How are we going to move it? By adding a positive 7 to both sides. All right, now you can do it. Let's add a positive 7 to the left and a positive 7 to the right. Now on the left, I get n, and I do look here, and sure enough, that is 0, isn't it? And then, hey, be careful on the right-hand side. What's 18 negatives and 7 positives? And I hope you think it's 11 negatives, and that's our answer. N equals negative 11. This is how your work will look. You don't need to do the boxing or the circling, but you'll have the plus 7 on both sides. You'll have the addition line. You'll have the N equals and circle your answer. All right, let's do one more. One more. Okay, so again, what do you want to move? And hopefully you think you got to move the positive 4. How are you going to move it? By adding a negative 4 to both sides. Adding a negative 4 to both sides. So I'm going to add a negative 4 to the left of the equal sign. I'm going to add a negative 4 to the right of the equal sign. All right, be careful. how many things do you have to add on the left-hand side? You really have three things. Now, some students would like to simplify first. Let's do just this part. What is 12 minus 7? We all know that's a 5, right? Now the left is actually a 5. What's 5 positives and 4 negatives? Well, that leaves you 1, right? On the right-hand side, positive 4 and negative 4 gives me 0 equals positive x, which is just x. And the answer to this is x equals 1, and we're done. Okay, again, that's how your work should look. Got some problems for you, but remember, you're not doing them tonight. All you had to do over the weekend is watch the video. Come on in the class on Monday. We'll work on these in class, and we'll continue on with equations. All right, so let me just do a quick recap here. Hey, remember, an equation are two mathematical expressions that are equal, right? Two mathematical expressions that are equal. What's the solution? The value of the variable that makes the equation equal or true, right? Value of the variable that makes the equation or true. Goal in solving the equation is to isolate the variable. Isolate the variable. What does that mean? Get it all by itself on one side of the equal sign. What are some good tips? Only use one equal sign per line. I hope you'll not violate that. Do the work down, not across. Do the work down, not across, and you can check your solutions. All right, then we talked about quantities added to the variable. You need to memorize this line. You'll see this on quizzes and tests because it's the key thought. It's the thought you have and how to do the work. So you'll have that statement many, many times. Memorize that. Memorize that. And then we went through and solved by adding whatever we're moving, we're going to add its opposite to both sides. All right. That's it. Have a great night. See you on Monday.